While working with the JavaScript, there are certain tasks that every developer repeatedly do. For example, cloning an object, merging two objects, finding the duplicates, or creating a unique array, removing the duplicates. If you're a front-end developer, copying the text to a clipboard, finding out whether the tab is active or not. So these are just few examples. So we are going to go through some of the one-liners that JavaScript has to provide, so you can improve your syntax using the beautiful looking JavaScript efficient one-liners that basically does the complex things in just one line. So let's start with the cloning object. So if you know that if you have to clone an object in JavaScript, you have to create a deep copy of it, and you can do that with the object.assign, or you can write your custom function that will basically iterate over the each property and will assign it to a property from a new object. But those things actually more than one line, and it makes your code more lengthy, and it is not readable at all. So you can do something like this. You can use a combination of the spread operator encapsulated in the object. So what it would do is the property or the characteristics of the spread operator is that it basically spreads all the properties, all the elements that are present in any type of object, and creates a new allocation in memory so that you will have a deep copy of those elements, and it will be a deep clone object that you can use. So here it would create a clone object from the original object with the same properties what it has in the original object. And using the same approach, you can merge two objects as well. So you can merge the objects. If I have object 1 with some property called, let's say, name, and object 2 with some another property, I can merge them using the same approach, like using a combination of the spread operator and then wrapping it in a curly bracket. So this will give me a merge object, like which has both properties from the object 1 and the object 2. Now interesting thing is, what if I have overlapping properties in it? If I have a name in the object 2 as well, then which one it will take? So we can see that also. Say I have a name here in the object 2 also, and let's run this and see what is the output that we get. And it took the name from the second object and not from the first object. So this is the interesting thing, that when it performs the merge, creating a unique array from the elements from the duplicates element. So I would say this is really simple and stupid for some reason, I feel, but it get your work done really quickly, and the syntax is very clean. You can do that in just one line. So you have an array with the duplicate elements like this. What you can do is you take that array, form a set data structure of it. So you convert the array to a set, you invoke the new set there, which will construct the new set object. And set has this characteristics that it accepts the only unique element. So though you provide the duplicate element to it, it is going to remove that. That's the default behavior of the set. So once you have your element convert, so once you have a set ready, you can simply destructure it. You can spread out its element and then form an array from that element, and that would be a unique. So you get a result like this. So next one is my personal favorite. I use it a lot when I'm working with a set, typically when I'm working on some algorithm. So this actually comes very handy. So if I have an array like these two, and if I have to find the intersection of these two array, what I can do is I simply invoke the filter method on any one of this array, and then in the filter I can specify the condition, what condition I want. So like I want a condition that every element on this array where I have filter has been invoked, this should include the value in the second array. And this basically ensures that whatever result we are going to get, it will be intersection. It doesn't matter that you invoke from the either array 1 or either array 2. You can like do it, you can swap this, you can swap this order, and in fact you can do it on more than one array also. Just chain the filter operation through the multiple arrays, and you have to specify the condition. Instead of array 2, you have to like include that you have array 3 that also includes these values. Conditionally adding a property to a object. So the clever use of spread operator along with a and condition operator basically helps you to add a properties conditionally into a object. So it basically evaluates the expression that if a condition is true or false, and if there is a value present, then it would add that property called key to a new object. So So output can be hello, but if condition is true. So this is how we can conditionally add a properties in our object. Dynamic object key. Let's say you have some property, some key that you want to add in your object, but you don't know the name of it, or you are simply uncertain about like what the name is going to be, or it is going to come at a runtime. So you can write something like this. You can write something like this. You can use a combination of square bracket. Inside that you can specify the dynamic key name, and then you can assign the value. So it will basically take the key from whatever value is there in this variable, namely dynamic key, and value you can assign whatever you want, and the result of this will be your object, which has a property with whatever key that you get from your variable and the value also. This is actually helpful if you don't know the name of the key, and many developer prefers to use this because sometimes we have a complex data object in which we don't know like what name of the key is going to be. Typically, when working with the TypeScript, you can avoid the use of any with this approach. The next one is actually I have learned in a hard way. I used to use RxJS to decide if my user is online or not, if my user is connected to internet or not. As a front-end developer, this is the common use case scenario that you may face, whether there is internet connectivity or not. Depending on, you can perform some batch operations like to fetch data from server or the post data to a server. So if you have to just implement a status checker, online status checker, you can do that with the navigator property from the Windows object, and this is a part of JavaScript window, so you don't need any external library for that. So it has a online as a property, and that basically is true or false, and depending on it you can decide like whether a user is online or not. This is actually really simple, and this is a part of JavaScript itself, and that's why it is very fast. Parse query string to object. Personally, this is a lifesaver for me. I mean, as a front-end developer, I many times have to extract the data which is present in the URL as a query parameter and then store it somewhere in the object. And if I try to implement that with my own logic, that would take a function, a separate dedicated function for it probably. But with this, you can do it in a very quicker way. So let's say I have a query like this where I have the name and the age, which are the properties in the query parameters. Then I can use the parse query. What it does is basically it creates a new object, and that basically creates it from entries, which is the method on the object, and you can use the URL search param, a class which basically accepts the query string, and it internally handles that logic of parsing like how many properties are there, and then destructuring that properties and returning the individual that basically get assigned to this new object. And in the end we can get the object like this where I would have the properties properly parsed. Oh, this is a lifesaver for me. Let's see what is the next. Safely accessing nested object properties. So in JavaScript, cannot read properties of undefined. This is the error that almost every developer has faced, and that happens if you're trying to access the properties that doesn't even exist on the object. And it happens in the complicated scenarios where we have objects which has a deep level of nesting or multiple level of nesting. So if you have to handle that in a safer way, you can use a combination of a optional chaining. So if you just put a question mark in front of the property, that means that if this property returns, then only check for the next property or the next child property of it, else don't check it. So this is how optional chaining works. And then we can pass it to the null coalescing operator. And what does a double question mark means here is it does that, okay, if the entire expression returns null, then simply just assign a value of anonymous to it. And with this, we cannot get an undefined error. If there is a property, then yeah, of course it will get assigned. But in this way, we can avoid that cannot read properties of undefined error. And probably, I think it may not make a sense to put this because I think this is really simple. But yeah, just to reiterate, you can swap the values in a JavaScript using something very simple or syntax like this. So you can just simply use a square brackets and simply assign them to each other, like interchange them, and you don't need to use like any third variable. This is actually a I would say very basic one, but it is a lifesaver. Basically, you don't have to write a ugly code of using a third variable anywhere in your script.